Dandadan is not your usual manga. Kinda like Kakurabachi, Dandadan has made some pretty interesting changes with how it wants to tell its story, giving some much needed, refreshing change in a genre that is overplayed, over-formulaic, and a little bit derivative. Well, what's it about? It's about this guy that gets possessed by a ghost, and the ghost steals his schlong, and he gets powers because of that exchange. And then subsequently, it's about a girl who also gets abducted by aliens and almost gets experimented on, but then discovers her telekinetic powers and manages to escape. The two then form a sort of will they, won't they love relationship and go on to have multiple misadventures whilst building on the romance that is their relationship. Sort of. Yeah? It doesn't make a lot of sense, especially when you consider that this manga kind of feels like it's really going to be leaning on a fair bit of fan service in order to get its reader count up to a high level. And look, it does dabble with a little bit of fan service.
That little girl is a child. I don't want to see you sniffing around her anymore this afternoon. Do you understand?
Yes, sir.
Boy, have you lost your mind, because I'll help you find it.
So yes, it does set itself up as another battle shonen manga where the main characters get given extremely powerful abilities and then learn to use those abilities to overcome bigger and badder monsters and bad guys, and they become extremely OP in this special world. It's a power fantasy and it leans on that fact in a big way. It's still a huge part of what makes the story so incredible. But what's really fun about this series is that it's not even trying to make the main drive of the protagonist their overarching goal. It's actually more to do with what motivates them in the first place.
そういえば名前なんだっけ？
おう、高倉健です。
As previously stated, it is a bit of a shallow premise to have the main goal of your protagonist be about him trying to reclaim his manhood in order to just simply have it back. I mean, he wants it back, man. Can you blame the guy? But when you think of shows like One Piece, Naruto, or even more recent ones like My Hero Academia, the main focus is on the young protagonist trying to become the most powerful version of whatever they are in this special world. And given that this is a subgenre of the shonen variety, it does make a lot of sense that you would have a young protagonist who goes to seek power to become the most powerful in this world with whatever manga that may be. However, there are manga out there like Demon Slayer, Jujutsu Kaisen, and Kakurabachi, which more or less, arguably, are all stories that want to flip that idea that going after power simply for the desire to have power is in itself a very dangerous thing and not one that should be lusted after purely for the sake of having it alone. Instead, Dandadan chooses to ignore all of those and take a leaf out of the page of something like Chainsaw Man.
The goal to give my life purpose is melons!
As in the fruit?
Idiot.
And give us a main goal, which is almost a throwaway gag. Something for you as a reader to intentionally not be that invested in and intentionally not care about all too deeply. Like, it's not important, but it does beg the question, how are you, as a reader, going to be invested in this story? And out of all the things you're telling me it's love? The love of two people getting closer and closer together after every misadventure and their struggle to admit their feelings towards one another, giving this will they, won't they kind of relationship in this story. It's just perfection, down to the last minute detail. Mwah! It does such an amazing job of building their relationship naturally over the course of over 160 plus chapters that are currently out. I think it's a bit more by now, but roughly. Then you have all of the amazing supporting cast that's in this manga, but that's probably more in line with how the world building makes such a great element and addition to the story as well. Speaking of world building, okay, I want to pronounce this right. Yokonobu Tatsu. I apologize, I didn't pronounce your name right. I am so sorry. I applaud you, sir, because you've clearly taken the page from One Piece this round, and it works so beautifully with this story. There you have a science fiction setting, and then you have a paranormal setting. A world of ghosts and a world of aliens both exist within the world of Dandadan. He's pretty much made an infinite number of world building settings and ideas that he can play with at any point in this story. On the side of science fiction, we have seen aliens, we have seen giant kaiju monsters, we have seen giant robots being formed out of houses, we have even witnessed the destruction and the utter obliteration of an entire alien planet. Then within the paranormal, we've come to explore human possession, cults, ghosts that come in a variety of forms, and we've even had one arc where the characters get transported into a board game filled with candy, monsters and frogs and giant knights and snakes. And what's really great in Dandadan is how these two extreme sides of the supernatural come and collide together and kind of work to help further that notion of romance and love being the heart and the center of what makes this story so special. Okuran is essentially a character that believes in aliens but doesn't believe in ghosts. And then Momo is a character that believes in ghosts but doesn't believe in aliens. And then by the end of the first episode, or essentially the first chapter or two, I can't quite remember, in the manga, the two end up believing in the other one's superstition. And then they kind of just end up working together. They keep kind of just having reasons that they need to stick around each other, and then they keep finding reasons to stick around each other, and then they just want to stick around each other. And that little development in a part of this world building makes for such a fantastic character-focused study on these two kids. And just like how these two characters had opposing ideologies, so too does the world building, always in constant clash within one another. The science fiction and the paranormal are constantly at odds against each other in this setting. It's like two worlds, two opposing forces, two opposite worlds that find themselves intertwined and constantly clashing with one another, only to eventually become one world. You see? You get it? Because it's all about, and yes, this story still also does feel a bit like utter nonsense, because they just seemingly keep kind of having reasons to have to be together because the plot requires them to be together in that moment. And it works well for the characters, and it ends up working really well for the story, but it does just then feel like a rambling of events and random things happening as new characters come in, as more development happens between these cast of characters, and as everyone kind of goes further and stronger with their powers, stuff kind of just happens in the plot, and they're kind of forced to deal with it, and it almost feels like they don't have a moment to breathe before they're on to the next adventure. It's random. It's a random story where random things happen, and it all just feels so random. I think I've said that enough now. But then this is all why it makes for one of the most unique and interesting manga that's out there. Because you don't get invested in the main character's, shallow goal that they have, because we've gotten past the point now where we still got so much of the story to come. And because this story takes a lighter tone, a more comedic element is pushed to the forefront of what makes this story so special, it does have a unique feeling that it just feels like kids trying to have fun. It's just a bunch of mates that all end up having fun, and they're all living their best lives, being possessed ghosts, or having telekinetic powers, or being able to take control of a house and turn it into a giant robot. Let's just throw all that in and have fun hanging out with your friends and getting up to mischief, and of course beating up the bad guys and being completely overpowered. And I feel like there's so much manga out there that is so committed to wanting to take itself so dark and seriously, wanting to make sure that those moments of OP action sequences are epic and amazing. And this manga still delivers that, but it does it with more of a tone that says, hey, these are just kids mucking about in your back garden, and they just end up having to have superpowers while doing all of that. So yes, it's about beating up the aliens and the ghosts that want to destroy the world, and it's about characters that use their powers in order to prevent all of that. But it's also about hanging out with your friends, about getting to know them, about understanding the pain and trauma that they've all gone through at some point, and how you're all there for one another when it matters most. In a weird way, it's kind of like the TV show Friends, but as a battle shonen manga. I don't know, maybe I'm stretching on that one. Maybe that's a bit too loose of a connection, but that's just the vibe I get from this manga, man. It's the enjoyment that I feel that I have the most with it is when I can see this story in this sort of a way. So with both Dandadan and Kakurabachi, I'm pretty happy to say that we've got some incredible new manga that's on the rise that is definitely going to be worth your time to get into. I just wish there was like a third one, you know? Something that still stood out on its own, but then maybe it took that darker turn. Maybe it's a story that took the darkest turn it could. Maybe one that gives us the grim despair, depravity of having to fight for those you love in an otherwise doomed and cursed world that only wants to see your life end. Nope, can't think of nothing. Alright, peace!